If you show up in the photo but you weren't standing there when the shutter clicked, it's already started. Glad you're back. Or maybe you're just tuning in for the first time. Either way, welcome. This is Haunted Real Estate, a series where we explore stories about spaces that don't just hold memories, they keep rewriting them. And tonight's place, this one, it rewrites you. Before we begin, I hope you're doing okay. Really. Whether your day was loud or lonely, heavy or light, I'm glad you're here now. Maybe you're listening in the dark. Maybe your lights are still on. But for the next few minutes, let's slow everything down. Let's walk into a place that doesn't forget faces, even ones it was never supposed to see. We're heading to 13 Bleeker Street in Paterson, New Jersey. A real address, a real building, one that's been through a fire, a shutdown, a few decades of silence, and then reopened. Someone moved in, thought it would be a quiet place to work. He was a photographer. He just wanted stillness. But what he found instead were photographs, ones he never remembered taking, and in every frame someone stood at the edge, wearing clothes from another time, and looking directly at him. His name was Adrian Cole, and he didn't believe in much anymore. Not in luck, not in ghosts, not in second chances. He had just turned 43 when he moved into the second floor of 13 Bleeker Street, bringing with him 5 crates of old camera equipment, 2 light stands, and a dozen rolls of unused film. He found the place through a friend of a friend, no lease, just cash month to month, the kind of setup that says don't ask too many questions. The landlord was quiet, didn't show him around, just handed him 1 key and said the first floor is locked off, still under repair. Adrian didn't mind. He was tired of people, tired of conversations that circled the same anxieties. Tired of the way digital photography had made everyone believe that nothing mattered unless it was posted by noon. He wanted silence and shadows and the satisfying weight of a camera in his hands. He set up his workspace near the back window, used the front room as a dark room, and slept in the narrow middle room that still smelled faintly of varnish. The first few weeks were peaceful, in the way old buildings sometimes are heavy with time, but not loud. The pipes hissed, the floor creaked, but nothing moved unless he moved it. He began walking around the block at dusk, taking shots of alleys, storefronts, and reflections in puddles after the rain. He preferred film over digital, not just for the texture, but for the mystery. For the pause between exposure and truth that few people understood anymore. One morning, he developed a roll he didn't remember loading, black and white medium format. 12 exposures, all from inside the house. 6 from the front room, 3 from the hallway, 1 from his bedroom, and 2 from the dark room. He was sure he hadn't taken them, because in every frame the composition was wrong. Tilted off axis, and too bright, as if someone had overexposed on purpose. And in the last photo in the corner near the baseboard was a person. Not blurred, not distant, a woman wearing a long dark dress with lace cuffs and her head tilted slightly away. But her reflection in the glass of the frame on the wall was facing him directly. He stared at it for a long time. Tried to rationalize maybe an overlay, maybe a ghost exposure, maybe the film had been used before and not fully cleared, but when he checked the negative, it was clean. No sign of reuse, no scratches, nothing to explain how an unmarked roll he never remembered using had captured something that shouldn't have been there. He didn't tell anyone about the photo, just filed it away in a box labeled Batch 0. And locked it in a cabinet. He told himself it was a mistake, an artifact of distraction. A week later, he found another roll in the drying rack with images he hadn't shot. This time they were in color and showed his bedroom from 3 different angles, one from the doorway, one from above, and one from the foot of the bed, and in each one he was sleeping. Not curled or restless, just flat on his back with his eyes closed and hands folded on his chest. The third photo had a small smudge in the lower left corner, the shape of a hand, just the fingers reaching toward the edge of the mattress. He stopped developing film for a few days, tried to clear his head, focused on cleaning the apartment, wiping down the windows, sorting gear he hadn't touched in years, but every time he opened the cabinet, there was a new roll waiting. And when he tried to ignore them, the dreams began. Always the same, always in the front room, always him holding a camera that was too heavy to lift, and someone just out of frame whispering his name over and over, not loud, not angry, just patient. He started leaving the lights on at night, left the cabinet open, let the reels sit on the desk unspooled, and watched them unwind slowly, as if the house was exhaling them on its own. He tried burning one roll in the sink, held the film over a lighter until it bubbled and snapped and melted into black. But when he returned from a walk the next morning, the roll was back in the drying rack, clean, crisp, and marked with a note that said, "Again." His hands began to tremble when he touched the camera, not from fear, but from anticipation, as if part of him knew what the lens would reveal even before he pressed the shutter. One day, just before noon, he snapped a shot of the empty hallway outside his bedroom, and when he developed it, there were 3 versions of himself in the frame. One walking, one standing, and one halfway turned, as if about to look over his shoulder. The room behind him was out of focus, but in the blur was the woman again. Clearer now, her face visible. Pale, sharp cheekbones. No eyes, just a smooth surface where they should have been, and still, she faced the lens like she had been waiting. He checked every lock in the house, checked every window, checked his own camera settings, but nothing explained the way the rolls appeared, or how they always knew the angle he had never chosen. He set up a motion sensor by the darkroom door, connected it to a small recording device, and waited, but all it captured was a single click at 3:14 a.m., the sound of the shutter releasing and then silence. The next morning, the photo was on his desk, still wet, still smelling of developer, and in it, he stood in the center of the room, looking directly at the lens with a slight smile. The same clothes he was wearing in that moment, the same expression, and yet he had no memory of standing there, no memory of smiling, and behind him in the photo, the woman stood with her hand on his shoulder. Adrian didn't sleep much after that night. He left the photo on the desk untouched, but every time he passed it, he felt something shift, not in the image, but in himself, as if the moment had happened, but not yet, and each glance brought him closer to remembering it. He started marking the film rolls as they appeared, naming them with timestamps instead of subjects. He thought it would give him control, or at least distance, but the more he tried to catalog the events, the more they blurred. Rolls appeared labeled with numbers he hadn't written. Images developed faster than chemistry allowed, and occasionally one photo would vanish before drying completely, curling up and disappearing as if it had never existed. One evening, he shot a self-portrait in the mirror, a test for exposure, nothing more. When he developed it, he saw himself standing slightly off-center, the mirror behind him clear, but the image inside was delayed a full second, showing him still raising the camera, even though the shutter had long closed. He stopped using mirrors, after that taped them over with black paper and avoided looking into windows after dark. The house responded in kind, shifting sounds throughout the night, not creaks or groans, but the unmistakable noise of film reels, turning of negatives being clipped of a shutter half-pressed, and held there waiting for the right moment. He heard his own voice once while brushing his teeth, a quiet cough from the dark room, and the sound of a sentence he had spoken days earlier whispered back to him, as if practiced and replayed perfectly only half a second too late. He recorded himself reading journal entries aloud, hoping to trap the delay, but the playback always looped into silence. The words gone, replaced by the steady click of an old film camera that hadn't been loaded in years. He found another photo taped to his door, not printed, but etched into silver foil. His own face, again. Eyes open wide, but pupils white, washed out with light. Behind him, a stairwell that didn't exist in the building, and her standing at the top, hand extended downward, not reaching, but directing, inviting. Perhaps he didn't know. He followed a draft one night to the rear of the apartment, a breeze that shouldn't have existed, and found a door he had never seen before, narrow and iron-framed with peeling red paint. It wasn't locked, but it was reluctant opening only after 3 slow pushes. Inside was a stairwell, unlit cold air rising from below the same stairwell from the foil image. He brought a flashlight, the beam weak but steady, and began to descend. The stairs felt wrong, not because they were unstable, but because they repeated. After every 7th step, the texture of the wood reset, same creak, same chip in the edge, same rust spot on the nail. He stopped counting at 42 and realized he had never reached a landing, just down and down until the door above was a square of light. He turned back, but there was no sound, no breathing, only the feeling of something listening. He snapped a photo, then another and a third. No flash, just the quiet whirl of the shutter. When he developed them hours later, the first showed nothing. The second was black, and the third showed a room he had never seen, with walls lined in photographs, dozens, maybe hundreds, all frames facing inward, and all of them empty except one. The one in the center, which showed him standing at the entrance, confused mouth, open just about to speak. He didn't remember speaking, but the next morning he woke with a sore throat and his voice lower than usual, as if he had been talking for hours to no one. He stopped writing after that. He started recording everything, even sleep-breathing steps, water boiling. Each tape began to collect fragments that didn't match his memory moments out of order. His hand reaching for something before he knew what it was. His reflection brushing past in a hallway when he had been seated the whole time. His body began to forget simple things, where he placed the tripod, how long he had been awake, which film was exposed and which was new. His hands moved faster than thought, and sometimes he would blink and find that a photo was already hanging to dry, one that he had no memory of taking but was undeniably his work. One day he saw her not in a photo, not in a shadow, but standing at the edge of the room, while he adjusted the lens, not hiding, not threatening, just still and observing. He spoke to her without turning his voice quiet and steady, asking if she wanted something, but she didn't answer, and when he finally looked up, she was gone, and the camera had taken a shot on its own. The print came out overexposed, except for one detail in the center of the frame. His eyes wide open, staring into the lens, but his reflection in the window behind him was blinking a second too slow. He left the apartment that afternoon, walked the block 4 times, looked at the building from across the street, and wondered how long it had been watching him. He went back inside because there was nowhere else to go, because the house didn't trap him. It invited him to stay and gave him something to hold on to each new photo, each new frame, a reason to keep processing, to keep asking, to keep looking. And every now and then, when he closed his eyes, he could see the wall again, the one from the photograph, the one lined with frames, and in the middle, the one with his face, always with his face. And the longer he looked, the more he was sure that in the frame next to his, someone new had started to appear. There came a point when Adrian stopped developing the film and just started collecting at each roll, placed gently in a box with no label, no date, no context, because he realized the house would process them anyway. Each morning he would wake to a new print drying in the corner, one he had not exposed, one he could not explain. And each night he felt the pull of the stairwell, even though the door no longer required pushing. It opened now, without resistance, without sound, as if it had always been meant to let him through. He no longer counted the steps, but he knew the rhythm. He knew the repetition. He knew the feeling of passing the same scratch on the wall again and again and choosing not to question it. One evening, he stood in the hallway, outside the darkroom, with a photo in his hand. It was blank at first glance, but under light it revealed layers, not one exposure, but 5 overlapping, faint and fading, except one. The final image was his face, older, softer, turned slightly away from the lens as if caught mid-thought, and behind him in the shadows another figure. Not her, not the woman from the first prints, but someone else. Someone with a camera raised, mirroring his own posture. The frame within the frame, the eye behind the eye. He wanted to tear it in half, but something stopped him. Not fear, not hesitation, but recognition, and a quiet question he couldn't put into words. Maybe it was never about capturing the truth. Maybe it was about rehearsing it until it felt real. He placed the photo on the floor and stepped over it like a threshold, and for the first time in weeks, he walked into the darkroom without checking the light or the chemicals or the position of the tools. He just stood there and waited, and slowly the walls began to fade, not disappear, just soften, blur, like the edge of an old photograph left too long in sunlight. And in that haze, he heard the shutter click. Not mechanical, but internal, like a thought sealed, like a memory being rewritten from the inside out. And suddenly, he knew the truth. He hadn't taken the first photo at all, not the one with the woman, not the one where he was asleep, not the one in the hallway. Those had been left for him, given not as warnings, but as rehearsals, as introductions to a script he didn't know he had agreed to follow until he was already inside the frame. And now he understood why they always showed him before he moved, why they always caught the glance before the breath, because the house didn't want to record his life. It wanted to teach him how to live it again and again until he got it right. But right wasn't real. Right was what fit the frame. He stood in front of the cabinet and opened it slowly. For the first time, it was empty. No reels, no film, no instructions. And yet he felt no fear, only a kind of stillness, like someone sitting in an audience and realizing the play has already started, and they've been watching themselves from the first line without knowing it. He walked back to the stairwell, paused, and looked behind him. No mirrors, no reflections, just a hallway bathed in red light from a bulb that had never worked before. He took the camera and set it on the floor, then turned and descended the stairs. They welcomed him with silence, with repetition, with precision. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. The photos would tell the story better than words ever could, and when he reached the bottom, there was no door, just a room filled with frames, some blank, some cracked, some still developing, and in the center, a single chair facing a lens, already focused, already waiting. The click came before he sat down, and when he did, nothing happened. No light, no sound, no shift. Only the understanding that he wasn't meant to leave a mark. He was meant to become one. And in that moment, he felt it. The slow, quiet joy of not needing to be remembered, only repeated like a pattern, like a process, like a whisper through an open shutter. And when he closed his eyes, he saw not darkness, but paper light, sensitive and waiting, and his name fading into exposure, one thin line at a time. 6 months later, the unit at 13 Bleeker Street was leased again. No fanfare, no renovation, just a quiet handoff, through an agency that no longer listed the property online. The new tenant, a woman named Erica, moved in with no knowledge of the last occupant, only that the apartment had good light and a working sink. She unpacked, slowly filled the space with canvases and sketchbooks and jars of mineral pigments. She told her friend she needed somewhere quiet to restart her work, to find what she had lost in the noise of the city. The walls were warm with dust and stillness, and something else, a kind of memory, not hers, but present like the smell of old paper behind plaster. On her third week, she found a small camera in the kitchen drawer, one she didn't recognize. Lightweight vintage, fully wound and holding a single frame of undeveloped film. She set it aside, intending to toss it, but something about the weight, the balance of it made her hesitate. That night, she took one photo of the hallway just to see if it still worked, and when she developed it at a local shop, the print came out pale and cracked, and in the middle, standing still with a faint smile, was a man with a tired face, and his hand resting gently on the shoulder of a woman in the background, who hadn't been there when she pressed the shutter. The technician asked if it was a double exposure, but Erica didn't answer. She didn't sleep well that night, the camera still on her table untouched, but not forgotten. In the weeks that followed, she found other things, a box of film marked with numbers she didn't understand, faint outlines drawn in pencil behind the drywall, notes in the margins of old magazines, initials pressed into the floor near the darkroom, ECACB0. At night, she heard clicks soft and steady sometimes from inside her closet, sometimes from the ceiling, and always at the same hour, just past 3 a.m. Not loud, not insistent, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone, but not watched. Either just expected. And when she turned the lights on, there was nothing there, not even dust, just the silence of a space that had already memorized her. She stayed for the full lease. Never reported anything odd, never asked questions. But when she left the camera on the kitchen counter, fully wound film inside. No photos, taken just one message carved softly into the leather strap. Not engraved, not burned, just traced again and again until the words were part of the grain. It said, "The frame always finds you in the end." And maybe that's true. Maybe some places don't trap us or haunt us or hurt us. Maybe they just wait for us to arrive and give us the shape to settle into. Maybe that's all. A frame is a quiet request to hold still long enough to be remembered or repeated. So if you ever find a photo of yourself, one you know, you didn't take one, where you're standing too still with your eyes too wide and someone just behind you, remember this. That photo isn't proof. It's instruction. And if you hear the click before you see the flash, it's already too late.